Alrighty. Thank you everyone for coming. Sorry, we were just a few minutes behind. Hope that you all are doing well and enjoying your Friday afternoon. We're going to get started in just a second. I'm going to show you a little video and
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021. Our goal as an organization was to create an online community for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone. We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students, people that lack the financial resources, or just those that do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. PST, and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. PST.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel. Many of our sessions will end with Q&A with our speakers. Any questions that you have can be put in the Q&A section on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answered.
After you have attended our event, you can log on to our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you'll be awarded a 2-hour mentorship certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with our upcoming events or want to tell your pre-med friends about Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Pre-Med CC.
alrighty. Well, welcome everyone on a wonderful Friday afternoon. We're honored to have soon to be Dr. Douglas in a month and a half?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah, Dr. Douglas, who is a graduating fourth year medical student at Stanford School of Medicine. He is a product of the North Bay and attended Santa Rosa Junior College and then transferred to the UCLA Bruins and graduated from UCLA. And then he in a degree, and I think he was a microbiology major, right?
Good memory. Yeah.
Yes. And then he did some research and then applied and got into Stanford Medical School. And he is graduating, like I said, in a few weeks, and he will tell you what he's going to do after that. And he's also a proud papa of two little ones. So
Thank you so much, Juban, for that introduction. So, hi, everyone. Happy that we can all get together on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I don't know about y'all, but it's been a long week for me. Still very busy these days. So I appreciate your guys' time and that you're joining us here today. I I oh my gosh, I feel like I always have too much to say. So I would just preface this talk, this discussion with really this is my goal for this session is more of a candid dialogue between, myself, who I consider a near peer, and you guys. And to kind of like provide you with a bit of foresight of what is to come, because and this my goal is born out of the fact that I really did not know what I was getting into when I started medical school. To be honest, I thought I did, but I absolutely didn't, and I made plenty of, dare I say, mistakes, like going through before I even started, and then going through medical school, that really made the process much more challenging than it needed to be, and that it had to be, and that it needed to be. And so I'm here as, someone who has, I think, good amount of lived experience. Even when I started medical school, I was already a little bit older than most. And then, I went through the pandemic in medical school and those challenges, as we all have, like through our education. And then I've come out the other side, and despite all the things that have come my way, and the choices I've made, and the things that have happened to me, uh, I'm still continuing to move forward. But my goal is to make it that much easier for others coming behind me. So that's basically my goal here with you. I have a couple brief slides to share to kind of introduce the audience and myself. Please, if you have any questions, like, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A section or the chat. Jubin will be checking those out and bringing them to my attention so I can answer them as we go along. Really, as much as is possible, I am very candid. I'm an open book. And I'm here also, like, just to reinforce, like, if you don't know anyone who's gone through this, you don't know any physicians very well, like, I'm that person for you. So again, happy to be here. Jubin, I'm okay to share my screen?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. Okay, slideshow. Okay. So the title of my talk is I got into medical school, now what? And I think the easy answer to this is celebrate, enjoy. This has been a long time coming, just to be able to get in the door. So congratulate yourselves, pat yourself on the back. You did it. Okay. And take some time to, go on vacation. I know I did. Like, I traveled for several weeks during that summer. But start to plan. And this is where I started to make my very first mistake, was not planning for what's to come. Part of that was out of my control, because at this time, even, I was on the wait list for several schools. And so I didn't really actually figure out I was going to Stanford until I want to say mid-June or almost July. So things were kind of like, had a stuttering start. But regardless of where you go, start to strategize and think about, what's the road going to look like over the next 4, 5, 6 years or 8 years if you're doing MD, PhD, or some combined program. So but first, celebrate. So I know, I think that was one of the, besides my kids being born the last several years, I think getting into medical school was one of the last times I cried. So it's a beautiful time. I want to get a little bit of a sense of where everyone is at and where they're going. So if you wouldn't mind following this link, you can just type it in on your phone or on. And we have okay, Jubin has a survey as well.
Yeah, I'm
So
gonna
if you
type that and put it in the chat.
okay, so follow the links you see in the chat, and then make sure you follow this poll EV link as well. And yeah, let's just take a minute to fill that out. I just want to see where everyone is headed in general. MD, DO, international schools. Okay. Mhm. Okay, we got the live readout up there. So okay, I don't know the raw numbers. I know the cap to this session is 100, according to Juin, but we have a majority MD, and then we have a sizable minority of DO students as well. So I think, this advice is applicable to both MDs and DOs. We all have to learn the same stuff. All of us are going to be equally as capable and competent physicians in the end, no matter where we get our training and no matter where we actually end up going. Um, that's great. Thank you. So let me stop that. Let me go here. Oops, that one, that one. Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit more about who I am, so I'm not just a complete stranger to y'all. Again, my background, so Jubin mentioned I'm from California, Northern California specifically, the Bay Area, the infamous Bay Area. First generation on my mother's side, she was born in Mexico. She actually was the first in her family to go to college. And as a result, I have surpassed her. It's kind of how it works every generation. Just keep on going forward and forward and forward. So I expect no less from my children, right? Um, uh, let's see. For myself, yes, I was the first in my family or anyone that I knew in my community really that went and that made it to medical school. So yeah, I thought, I really felt because my mother obviously she'd had education, but I felt it like the moment in which I surpassed her, got my microbiology bachelor's from UCLA, and then going into medical school, you reach the limit of like those that are most invested and those that care about you the most, the limit of the guidance that they can truly provide that's very helpful. And so you're going to have to look outside of those people who have supported you in your entire life, uh, to others in the community, people like myself through this program, Pre-Med CC, to find the support and guidance that you need in order to be successful going forward in this career. Um, so yes, so continuing my story, like I've always been non-traditional. That's something about me that a badge I wear with pride. So I didn't graduate from high school not because of lack of intelligence, but because of lack of will and drive and really caring about my education at that time. And so I didn't graduate, and then I got my GED in 2009. And it was through my community college. So Santa Rosa Junior College. I attended that institution on and off for a while because I was working, and back then I wasn't sure or even had the inception of the idea that I was going to go to medical school. But eventually I transferred in 2013 and went to UCLA. And I remember that transition being big, it was tough, but I felt overall very well supported. There's a lot of students that do make that transfer move, whether it's to a UC or a CSU or any other institution. Like I feel like the schools have, it keeps getting better and better in terms of the amount of support. I know just at UCLA, for example, like when it went back there, they went from a tiny little transfer office to this huge like floor of a building, and like so every year it keeps getting better. And yes, it was challenging, but I felt very well supported overall because of just the volume that they see of transfer students. But um, going from all of that then to transitioning to medical school was a whole nother beast, a whole nother environment that um, I'll say again that I wasn't fully prepared for. And I think there was a personal disconnect in my mind between the amount of money I was paying and and uh like the amount of money I was paying, the expectations I had for the program, and then what the reality was of the program. So I thought, and also like I had this misconceived notion that okay, I'm coming from a huge undergrad institution. Um, and my major microbiology, there's tons of people. I'm going to go to this really, the class size, no matter what medical school you go to, at most a couple hundred, like it's going to be intimate. Everyone's going to know each other. Everyone's going to be really thoroughly connected. And I would say that you can't go in with that assumption. Like, like things can be very decentralized, and it and I think it's the nature of the beast. It doesn't matter where you go to medical school, MD, DO programs, especially in this age of technology and online education and things are just going to be like spread out, decentralized. Like we didn't really have like an office you go to where it's like this is where all the resources are. Everything's spread out. People are communicating with you via email, back and forth. Um, and so you're left to sort out a lot of things for yourself and also like amongst your peers. And I'll say more about that. But um, then my story gets even more complicated because here I applied to anesthesia residency program. So it took me the longest time to figure out what it was I wanted to do. Um, and I struggled with this like immensely. And this is, I think, also a huge area for improvement. You know, if I were to go back in time, uh, is like career mentorship, I would call it. Like I didn't realize the importance of it and realize that I was missing it like in my beginning years. And that by virtue of it not being like thrown at me, I needed to go seek it out. I just was like, oh, I'm just trying to like pass my exams. But this is critically important. It's your years in medical school are going to go by tremendously fast. So, um, again, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but what I ended up doing was I finally found anesthesia. And it's for one, it's very difficult to find experiences in anesthesia unless you know about it and get connected with it early. But I eventually did. And then I applied into anesthesia residency. And because of my situation, like academic situation and the score was basically my CV and everything, like it wasn't terrible. Like it was like, eh, it wasn't terrible. Like I satisfied all, like the basic requirements and I've done some good things and particularly like things I'm most proud of, like things with outreach, things working with pre-med students and so forth. But for anesthesia, I did not meet the bar. So I ended up getting very few interviews. I ended up not matching is what they call it. So that, I mean, I'm still feeling the emotional repercussions of that a bit, but I think, I'm happy where I'm at. So what ended up happening after finding out that it didn't match, is that I did this supplemental offer and acceptance program. And it's like this official program that, and this is getting a little bit head into the weeds, but basically, residencies, they do this matching algorithm, and no matter what, the algorithm isn't perfect. So there's spots that are unfilled across all the different disciplines every year. And those spots are then filled by this subsequent process, which I went through. And after doing a lot of soul searching and putting a lot of thought into it, I realized that I wanted to become a pediatrician. Like that was my next best choice. And I think that, I'm happy for it. I'm very grateful. And I mean, most of my experiences were actually in the world of pediatric anesthesia to begin with. So it was kind of a natural pivot for me to go into pediatrics. And that's what I did. And I matched at Kaiser Oakland. So I'll be working at Kaiser in Oakland in the East Bay and as a pediatrician. So that you never know exactly how things are going to turn out, but I want you to be vastly more prepared than I ever was. That's for sure. Um, yeah, and we can talk more about residencies to come, but I think right now is a good time to check to see if there's any questions or any comments about anything, or is
Yeah, one
everything?
of the questions they want to know is what is the most challenging aspect of medical school that took you by surprise, and how did you overcome it?
The most challenging aspect of medical school. I think it medical school is is you have to recognize it's like climbing Everest and you have to pace yourself. But you gotta be in stride from day one, I would say. And it's like you're one of the porters. You're not one of the the tourist. You're carrying 100-pound pack on your back. That's what it feels like in terms of studying the sheer amount of material that you need to be studying and that you're expected to know. And no matter what, you could spend 24/7 studying. You're not going to know it all. And you're always going to be made to feel like you don't know something that you should have known. And, you just have to be prepared for that and just do the best you can each and every day. And um, yeah, just attack it with a plan. I think the biggest problem, the biggest challenge for myself was in terms of this giant, just even seeing the mountain. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't even fathom like how tall this mountain was. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge for myself. Like, because it feels like it never, was never ending. I'm just going to class and people are telling me this, and everyone has different expectations. And whether it's your professor, whether it's an attending, whether, even when you're doing rotations, the resident, the attending, different people will have different expectations in different moments. And I think the biggest way to overcome it is one is like is to be able to see the mountain. And I think a good way to do that is like to look at an overview text or to look at text or like an online uh uh um study program that kind of like breaks everything down to the most high yield content. And then so kind of the general overall landscape of what you're expected to know in actuality for like testing purposes and to get, to be able to pass your steps. Um, I think that's the hardest thing is like managing the expectations and just accepting the fact that um people are always going to know stuff and you're just not like even if you like I don't know and it's just the nature of it. And then I think what else can I say about it? It's like um yeah, it's okay. Like you are intelligent, you are capable. You you haven't done that you have legitimate reasons. You don't need to mention it that this is how the game works. Like you haven't done OB-GYN yet. They're asking you something related to maternal fetal medicine. Like it's okay to not know that, um for example. But you just learn what you can, learn something new each and every day. I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully I provide some insight. Yeah. Are there any other questions, Julie?
Yeah, this is another one. What advice do you tell yourself when you're feeling discouraged? How do you keep going when you're feeling down?
Oh man, how do I keep going if I'm feeling down? Well, it's something I honestly I struggle with feeling down at times even now. Um, on the cusp of starting residency, there's just not a lot of time to take like a break, like get a breather. Um, so for me, it's kind of easy, and it's not the case for most people because I expect that most people don't have children. But when I see my daughter and, she says, "You can do it, Daddy," that 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 gives me a perk. Also like at times when I have dedicated study periods, like there are times when you literally don't need to be on campus or whatever. If I can, I will come home to my parents' house. I have that luxury. And so because I'm comforted by being around my parents. They're getting older, who knows how many more years they have left. And I like being in my hometown. So I do that during dedicated study periods to kind of keep my cortisol levels a little bit lower while I'm going through the grind. Um, and it kind of helps to recenter myself. In addition, I think the day to day, like when you're in medical school, the staples like they hold true. So good nutrition and exercise, like those hold true. So if you're not taking care of your body, it's not going to take care of you. So you need to, get in an exercise routine. And exercise doesn't mean lifting weights, which I always did my whole life. It even, just getting out and going on a jog, like 10, 15 minutes, like getting your heart rate up, uh, 15 minutes at a time, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. That's all you need. But you need to get in the routine now because if you try to pick yourself up once you're already in the hole, and I feel like I've had to do that in medical school, is like I already was in a hole. It's really hard to do that. So try to like buttress yourself for the forthcoming storm is what I would say, because it can feel like that, like the amount of stress that you're put under, the scrutiny, the evaluation. There are times of feeling isolated as well. Like I don't want to be like super depressing, but like uh it is a fact. Like a lot of people talk about like the feeling of isolation, especially like when you transition from preclinical, which is like classroom based learning, to clinical based learning. That usually you're in, for all intents and purposes, on your own. Like you're alone. A lot of times you'll be the lone medical student on the team. Say you're inpatient and you're inpatient internal medicine, you may be the only medical student on the team. Everyone else is a intern, which intern is first year resident. You're with the residents, you're with the senior, with the attending, but you are the junior most learner. And then outside of that, like you're supposed to have some teaching collectively as with other students who are going through the same rotation. But sometimes that's just like you meet via Zoom, um, and it can be very infrequent. So there isn't really a feeling of camaraderie as a medical student sometimes a lot on your clinical rotations. And then you're so exhausted that you just go home. And if you live alone, you can see how the isolation can kind of build on itself. So it's really important. I think most people who have formed really strong like friend groups or best friends or connections like first, second year, like you know, you have to build in time to like nurture and maintain those relationships, but it really paid dividends like when you're going through these clerkships, um, to kind of like connect, with your friends and everything in medical school or outside of medical school, um, to help you get through those tough times. So, okay. I can go on. So a question I had for you, and if y'all would humor me and type in the chat, uh, I'm curious what your expectations are of your medical program. What do you expect from them? And I'll give it like a minute.
Do you have the poll open or
Do I have a poll? There's question and answer, and then there's chat. Which one should I be looking at?
just put it in the Q&A, people, everyone.
Okay, Q&A. Okay.
I would probably ask the first question is that you expect to know everything and learn everything, and yeah, I think that's the expectation, is that they would tell you everything.
I think that's a really fair expectation and something that I came in to medical school expecting. Uh, I I expected, because again, like I didn't come from financial means. I had gotten a scholarship and done a lot of, I worked, like I did a lot to make sure that I didn't have any debt when I went into medical school. I was fortunate. And I knew it was going to be expensive. I was like, I'm prepared to be saddled with a bunch of debt. And that's another thing too. Don't expect that, no matter how wealthy your institution is, that they're going to fully fund you. Uh, don't expect that. I'm just like, I shouldn't, it's not guaranteed unless you're MD, PhD, I would say. Like they may, because there's a difference between like, oh, your tuition is covered versus cost of living. So they may say, oh, you get a full tuition scholarship. Technically, I think I got that, like full tuition. However, I still have $250,000 in debt. It adds up, just like living and being a full-time student. So um, I knew that, despite getting a scholarship to cover the tuition and everything, I was still gonna have debt because I gotta live, I gotta eat, I gotta have a roof over my head, gotta have a car. You do have to have a car, by the way. Not first. Once you start clinicals, it's really difficult. Most everyone gets a car. Um, I thought, okay, it's an exchange. It's like it's a fair exchange, and this is just my own personal opinion too. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I thought, okay, I'm indebted to the federal government, but I'm paying 50 grand a year, and they're gonna teach me everything. Um, I would say from in my lived experience, that's not the case. And it kind of blew my mind. It blew my mind because of the amount of money that I'm forking out to not be taught, like just to not be taught. And I compared teaching, like what teaching was, my standard for what teaching was community college. My standard was, okay, I got the tutorial center, I got free tutoring, I got the math lab, I had, constant access to knowledge and clarification, and I have teachers that have open office hours and blah blah blah. I thought like it was gonna be more like that, and I'm like completely wrong. Um, and I know there's variability from institution to institution, so some can be better than the others. But for the most part, think about it. In hindsight or in retrospect, it makes total sense. Like, who are the experts? The experts in medicine are practicing physicians. That's it. They practice medicine. They don't teach. Like, so in between doing like a million surgeries, they get the surgeon to come by to give you one lecture. And at that point, if you don't exchange emails with that guy, you'll never see him again, probably. So like that was like the hardest thing for me to eventually I realized and got it, but like they're not going to teach you everything. So, and like your teachers, like I said, it's also related to the decentralization of just like the administration, like the offices, everything that supports you, but it's also a decentralization of teaching. Like, and because there's so many subspecialties, like the GI surgeon can't give you the pulmonology lecture. So like it's just like a grab bag of different lecturers and like yeah, it's just like then how, and then obviously there's like some of them are really great educators, but then again, like you won't see them like ever again. Some of them are not so good. So you have a variability in terms of ability to relay the information, how it's being presented to you. And a lot of times it's up to you to sort through the noise. There's a lot of noise. And so and then it also makes sense now why there are so many third-party companies out there trying to improve medical education. And this is what I realized too. You got like Amboss, you got uh Osmosis, you got all these companies out there, USMLE RX, like all these programs, and they're trying to fill that need. They're like, we will, come up with a holistic program, follow our program, and uh, we'll help you sort through the noise. And this is what makes it harder than it needs to be too. Like, um, if you try to do that, like for myself, I don't think I'm very good. I'm not good at that. Like, I need to be shown like the path. Like, I need to be like guided, and then in order to flourish. I can't like make it up as I go myself. Uh, that led to a lot of stumbling, a lot of falling, a lot of struggling to get through certain past certain thresholds. Um, so So yeah, I think that that's a big lesson and something you should embrace. But at the same time, don't be overwhelmed by all the various options for like third party resources, because that's another thing. I was like, eventually it dawned on me, oh, I need to get something. Like I need an additional help. I'm already spending 50,000 a year. It's not meeting my needs. I need to spend more on a third party program in order to get through and be successful. Um, and yeah, it's kind of a shame that a lot of people and then it's really unfair to people who don't have a lot of extra money lying around, because these programs, they're easily hundreds if not thousands of dollars, and the school will be like, at least I can say Stanford, the fact was that they said, okay, we're going to give you 6 months access for free. But in reality, I would say that's not sufficient. A lot of students, they would sign up for these programs from day one and have access throughout the entirety of their medical school. So that's already a huge barrier for people who don't have the financial means, because then, and that's not, factored into your tuition really. Um, but I wish I would have known that earlier, and I wish I would have like maybe looked into it, a few of these resources before I started medical school, and it would have just like, you know, embraced the fact that I needed to spend a little bit more money in order to get the type of program that I was more expecting. Um, and these days, I think, it's been a while since I've been in medical school. Since I started medical school, I think a lot of these things have like these resources have gone beyond medical school, and they're more in the pre-med and things that I didn't even hear about when I was a pre-med, like UWorld. Like when I was a pre-med, I never heard of UWorld or anyone using it. Now I hear a lot of people using resources like UWorld as a pre-med to study for the MCAT and so forth, which many of you might have done, or probably
Just
did.
add is the whole point of pre-med is to learn like the best way you could learn and study. So if you're a visual learner, like know that. And I think that's where the key part of it is that like know how your learning style is. I think that's a huge, I mean, for me, it was just a big struggle to figure out how I learn,
Yeah, yeah. So
because
don't,
and a lot of these programs are very different. Like they're not all the same.
yeah,
And so like that's a huge part of it too, is learn like how you learn.
yeah. If you know how you learn, like don't try to reinvent the wheel either, I would say. Like, I don't know. Like,
And
yeah.
don't copy everybody else, because everybody's very different and unique. And just don't, like I said, don't fall off the lemming path.
Yes. So there's going to be a lot of people, because I would see like students like on their phone, they had whatever program downloaded, and well, maybe it was UWorld, maybe it was Amboss, maybe it was something else, and they were just doing questions like during lecture. And I'm like, I can't do that. I can only focus on one thing at a time. I'm just going to focus on lecture. Um, uh, but then other people, and then some people, actually a majority, and things maybe have changed, but a majority of people actually didn't even show up to lecture. And this was like before the pandemic. I don't know if they gotten stricter, but um, people wouldn't even show up to class. So I was always like confused about what should I be doing? Should I be in class? I did ultimately end up going to class, but I was always like, should I be here? Should I not be here? Should I be using this app? Should I not be using this app? Should I? And it was, yeah, like figure it out. Hopefully you figured out now, but through your pre-med years, like what works best for you. But if not, that's okay. Just like do some research like this summer in terms of how specifically you are going to tackle the next 4+ years in medical school. Whatever works for your style. Okay. So yeah, I wrote down some other medical school assumptions, not good or bad. I think that are important to touch on. Um, Good mentorship. I thought that that would be easier than it actually was. So this is also in addition to like this basically we've been talking about like academic, like planning for the academics themselves, but there's other major components. Another major component is finding mentorship. Like I said, like you've gone beyond most everyone you know in your life at this point. Like you need to find good mentors. And it doesn't, I would say it doesn't really matter like what specialty they're in. It matters that they care. Like it matters that they care about your success. And the thing is that you're gonna find a lot of mentors. Like they in medical school, they pair you up with people. They call them different names or whatever, but they pair you up with people who are supposed to be your mentors. But you can quickly like trust your gut. If this person doesn't, if you don't get the sense that they care, don't waste your time. I was always I like guilted myself into like feeling obligated to like meeting with certain mentors because I was assigned to them, you know, this is official, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, like my gut was right. Like some of them didn't care, or they did. It wasn't that there were bad people. They didn't have the time to care. They had other priorities in their life, even though they were like, they held these roles. Don't feel bad about like ghosting those people. Like your time, your life, your journey, your career is more valuable than that. And so, you know, just wash your hands and move on. Like find someone who really cares about you and who will listen. I think it took me a long time to find those kind of mentors that were available to me and that were really wanted to see me succeed. And, you know, fortunately, I did at the last second, but I hope that you don't have you find them quicker, and you're going to have to do the legwork. I would say, unless you get lucky. And what I mean by that is talking to people and shadowing is probably the best way to go about it. And shadowing, another misconception I had that I didn't need to shadow. Well, that's something that pre-meds do. I don't need to shadow. You need to shadow. You need to shadow starting in the beginning. Like you need to see, because it's another issue with the time frame of medical school is that there is not enough time to see everything. And even if you add up all your pre-med clinical experiences plus everything in clerkships that's going to come, you're not going to have time to see everything in medical school. You're not going to have the time to figure out what you love before it's time to apply to residency. So the only way you can overcome that is keep shadowing like day one. And if you have a really amazing lecturer, like I remember, oh, you know, I mentioned like sometimes you get some really amazing ones. You're like, wow, they seem like an excellent teacher. Like talk to them, say, hey, can we exchange emails? I'd really love to see open heart surgery with you. Like boom, you have the ticket now, you have the badge, you can go into those spaces and those environments. And like 9 times out of 10, they're more than willing and gracious to accept people like that. And who knows, maybe that'll be your long-term mentor. But if not, again, it's okay to let them go and then move on to the next. But keep seeking out those experiences from day one, I would say. That's something I didn't do. Another big assumption I had was that the MCAT, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing to say, but like the MCAT was like the big end all be all test. It is the first. It's like all the mountain ranges in leading up to Everest in the Himalayas. Like it's the first of many. So um, keep that in mind. Like it it continues after the MCAT with step one, and then step two, and you're supposed to finish step one and step two before you graduate medical school. And then in DO, I know it's different. They have, what is it? Uh it's analogous, but I forget the name, but it's like stage one or stage two. Forgive me if I'm wrong. And then the step three is when you're in residency. And you have to do that. And these tests, they're all day tests. They're like 8, 9 hours. So and the studying basically, again, it starts with from day one, it starts with a really good plan. And I assumed, another assumption, like, oh, I was going to follow the program. But again, I feel like the program doesn't meet the needs of the vast majority of students. And therefore it won't be sufficient. I will just say it. Your program in and of itself won't be sufficient to prepare you for step one or step two. Like you need supplementary resources and you need your own individualized strategy in order to do the best that you possibly can on those exams. Because like it or not, those exams, and this is the reason why I didn't match into anesthesia. And this is a big takeaway lesson is that that's how much your score matters. Um, for step one's pass, no pass now, but step two is scored. And so all of the weight is on step two. So the pressure is to score as high as you possibly can. And certain residencies, they don't tell you, and this is like the hidden curriculum, but like they don't tell you either, but it varies discipline by discipline, and it also varies institution by institution, and it varies year to year. So there is never a predicting it, but certain residency programs have like a minimum threshold where like if you don't meet it, you just literally are automatically weeded out. And that I don't have the hard proof, but that is the reason I didn't match into anesthesia. I didn't even get interviews into programs. It's because I didn't have the minimum, unknowable, like whatever the threshold they had said, I didn't meet it for like 90% of the programs. So it doesn't matter where you train or whatever. If you don't meet the minimum, then they're not even going to entertain you for an interview. It's a little bit sad, but yeah. Other disciplines are a little bit less strict. For example, family medicine, pediatrics, but um, there's a strong correlation between the whatever the cutoff score is or whatever the average score is of people who get in certain residencies and the amount of potential income you stand to earn. So keep that in mind. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things I listed here. I touched on a lot of it. I was so naive. I don't know. See, I'm very honest. Like I thought we were gonna be one big happy family, like because there was only 100 of us, but that's not true. And I think, yeah, just find one good friend. All you need is one best buddy, but you need no one can do this alone, and you need someone in the trenches with you. And I think that that probably made the biggest difference for me when it came to when I uh got through some of these big exams. It was like having a study buddy. For me personally, that made one of the biggest differences, and it's very important. Let's see, talked about that. You talked about the debt. Assumptions, yeah, that was true. It is like drinking from a fire hose. That's what you'll hear. Lectures will be worth going to. And then, yeah, this is just something like it's a personal preference, I guess, or choice, or it depends on the institution. I was just dead set on my like I was a type of person to always go to every lecture and like sit at the front of the class. So I went to lectures even when like for my school during the time in which I was doing preclinical, like 95, there was only of the 100 students, 5 people would come to lecture. And I'm like stubborn, like, but you have to be adaptable, I would say. There was probably in that time and place, like, there was a reason why like 95% of the students were not coming to class. Like, I should have like questioned that. Um, yes, mental health, very important. It will be taxed. We touch on strategies to address it. Also, if you have a history of mental health issues or diagnoses, get ahead of the game there. Like you're already in, you're accepted. It's okay to reach out to your like the mental health resources on campus or through your institution to try to get that set up early, because it was something that I had to confront in the midst of medical school as well. And it took a lot of legwork and it was very challenging. So try to get ahead of that, get established early. And that kind of also blends with um, disabilities. So disabilities and personal health issues is also a big issue in medical school. It doesn't really get talked about a lot. But you have rights. And it was something new that I had to deal with that I never had to deal with before. And um, it takes, there's a lot of, there's a high activation energy here. You got to put in like a lot of legwork to get things set up because I had to do like accommodations things, and that was it was a headache, and it took actually months to get implemented. And I'm sure they've gotten better over time, but again, my expectation was that everyone knew how to address these issues. Like, give me a break. These people are supposed to be physicians or supposed to be like PhDs or whatever. That may not be true. This may be the first time they're having to deal with someone in your situation. Sad to say, but that was my case too. And like going through all that stuff in the middle of trying to figure out how I was going to pass the test, it's terrible. It is, maybe it's a little bit scary to come out and talk to these things, but talk about these things or bring them up. And I know it was for me, but I would encourage you to try to confide in somebody. And usually they have an office of accessible education, and that's who it was that I went to. It took me the longest time to get set up with them or even find them. So look out for stuff like that if you need it. Office of Accessible Education, you have rights underneath the 80, Americans with Disabilities Act. And it is really important to get this started early too, because, and this is the case for me, I needed accommodations for my test. And so for step one, if you had to go through it through the MCAT, you know a little bit about it, but or other exams. I had to do it for the first time for step one, step two, and they are very strict. Like they are very, very, very strict because this is like the integrity of medicine itself you're dealing with. Like, and so if you have to request extended time, they're going to be like, give me every bit of data and information that you have that supports this claim. Like you needed extra time on your exams during medical school. We need that paperwork. We need this paperwork. We need this. We need the notes from the doctor and everything. So if you need it, that's okay. But you just need to have that history of accommodations, because then it's going to play into getting those accommodations when you that you need on step one and step two. And if you need it, you need it, and um, you deserve to get it. You shouldn't make it harder than it needs to be for yourself. So
Yeah, and that's really important. If while you're an undergrad, there are offices at community college and offices that is available to you. It's actually your right, and it's a federal right. So any
yeah,
school pretty much that accepts federal money, they have to make it available to you, and a lot of times it's confidential. So unless like on the MCAT it shows up and everything, but again, like don't be afraid to use it. I have a colleague who's a orthopedic resident, and he's dyslexic, and he gets a lot of like accommodation, but he also like writes on the arms that he's doing procedures on, and has all of these different mechanism, and it's okay. Like, and I would probably say that him as a dyslexic orthopedic surgeon is actually more cautious than the ones that are not. He takes more steps to make sure what he's doing is right. And so yeah, so I would just say that like that's not, there's no shame in using that or do
yeah,
that. Somebody has a really good question
yeah.
is how do you
Please.
manage your family and culture? They have a full family and they're Mexican, and they get a lot of cultural criticism like you should be home, you're never going to finish,
Oh,
those kind of negative Nancy's.
yeah. I think that's very tough. I just want to, you know, say that and recognize that that's if you have family who unfortunately does say those negative comments to you. Um, I don't know the best answer in terms of how to address that because my parents, they are supportive. They want me to be studying like all the time. Um, but regardless, like, I have family commitments. I have onus to not only my parents, but sometimes my siblings or definitely my children and my partner at home. I think, you know, uh, as I think about it, there's conflict with family for sure. I would say that there's conflict. How do I manage it? Well, you got to make some tough decisions, basically, and you're gonna have to sacrifice. Another example of that is from my own life is that when I had to study for some of the biggest exams that were the most stressful and impactful with screaming, crying kids at home, I told my partner, I'm like, hey, I can't do it. I can't, and I need your support, and I need to step away for a while so that I can focus. And sometimes you're backed into a corner, and sometimes you have to make drastic decisions. And I makes me feel mixed emotions. Like I don't get to see my kids for a couple weeks, you know. But yeah,
Yeah, the only thing that
it's
I would
tough.
just add is that this is a like studying, and it's like an individual thing. It's not a collective thing. You got to do it on your own. And it is lonely. Like, you got to sometimes
Yeah.
just sit in a room and, but it's a sacrifice. It's kind of like, it's I would say delayed reward because, when you're done, you're going to be in the top 1% of income. So, you got to
Mhm.
have to sacrifice. It's kind of like a delayed thing. Like if you know, you have to, it's choices, and it's not, if it was fun and exciting, everybody would do it. And it's not like basketball where everybody shows up to a stadium and these basketball players. Nobody's going to show up and pay tickets to watch you study. And,
Yeah,
and I think it's just those
that's good.
rewards benefits to say, hey, X amount of time I'm putting in, but Y amount of time, like I know some of my friends that have graduated or that I work with, they're $300,000 in debt when they
Mhm.
finish, but they all live comfortably. They all own homes, and it's your MD next to your name. MDDO next to your name is 150 points on your credit score. So, you're a good bet. And I know even like some of the um, health plans or benefits, like if if you want to live in a place there's a shortage of physicians, groups will actually like pay for your down payment, and so there's a lot of things, there's a lot of benefits to it, but like you gotta want to do it and you gotta want to make the sacrifice. And the cultural stuff is tough. I mean, like I had a friend of mine who's, dad would like ask him, hey, mijo, why aren't you working? Your cousin's working at the body shop and, he's driving a nice car. Why aren't you doing it? And he's like, well, I'm studying,
Yeah.
it's tough. Those like cultural things are really tough, but I also think that um, if you sit down and you draw a picture for them to say, like, not like a little picture, but say, hey, I'm doing XYZ, and these are, going to be, my rewards and the joy that you're going to bring. And I just think it's just really hard to do it. But I think some parents, if you're first gen, they don't understand the process.
Yeah. And because it's such a long process.
You may not even know the process, which I think makes
Yeah.
it even much harder. Is like you may not know the whole process either. So
Yeah.
explaining it to your parents is much tougher. But I think, um, yeah, it's much tougher. And I think the cultural stuff is very challenging. Um,
So true.
this is another question.
Please.
Is this person's interested in transferring to UCLA from LBC, Long Beach City
Long
College,
Beach. Yeah.
LB, and I hear this is very difficult to get accepted. Can you share your GPA when you transferred and other aspects that might contribute to your acceptance to UCLA as an undergrad?
Yeah, UCLA, it is difficult to get into, more so as a freshman though. If you, I think you can look at the statistics, but like if you apply in as a freshman, your odds are very, very low percentage wise. A little bit higher as a transfer student, I want to say. And but yeah, it's still hard. My GPA. So this is the thing. Like when I was after I failed out of high school, I did take some classes like at the JC, the junior college, and like I didn't even bother to drop them. I just stopped showing up. And like, so I had a bunch of D's and F's on my transcript. And then I did, so those are there and they can see them. Like they don't like t disappear. Um, but I had an upward trend in my GPA. And I did the academic renewal process, which expunges those technically from the GPA calculation. So there's a lot of caveats to my GPA, but you can still see the D's and F's on there. I think my GPA was like 3.7 or something like that when I transferred to UCLA after I did academic renewal and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So,
protect your GPA. It's kind of like herpes, it stays with you forever. Um,
yeah.
but I would say the biggest thing, the person that asked from LBC, there's a program which actually is one of our sponsors partners with Pre-Med CC is called the UCLA CCCP. And no, it's not the old, Communist Party, but it's called the Community College Partnership. And Long Beach City is actually they have like people there, students there that help you. They have summer programs, they have academic year programs. They will actually like work there with you when you're applying. They'll go over workshops on how to do the PIQ essays, and they also have access to admission counselors from UCLA that are connected to every community college in the state. So look them up. I put the link on there. They're also on social media as well. Like just like and once you're involved with them for a bit, they may even hire you as a peer advisor. And so definitely look them up if you really want to go to UCLA. They have great program. That's a wonderful program, and you just have to be in California. And you don't have to be in Southern California. You could be anywhere in California and participate in them. And their summer program, they even bring you on campus and pay you to be in a summer program with them. And so they'll cover your travel, housing, and everything else. So definitely look it up and follow up with them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just touching on a couple of other questions. Esteban was asking how collaborative the atmosphere was. I think I touched on this too. Like, um, you just need one good friend. That's all you need. I assume that everyone's going to be nice like me. That's not the case. There's definitely going to be some a-hole classmates. Like you will have them. But don't waste your time on them, you know? Um, yeah, not everyone is there for the altruistic reasons that you are. So
yeah,
just
there's going to be, yeah, just like in pre-med, there's some people that
yeah.
are a-holes that you avoid. Like, I'm sure we all had like one lab partner that you actually wanted to take out and, do other things than chemistry with them.
Yeah,
Um, but I think that's just life. You're gonna meet
that's life.
people, we've all worked places where people that you work with, you want to avoid them like the plague, and other people you get to know them. And I think medical school is the same thing as life. And I think, but you do have to study, and some people study better in groups, some people study, and you just got to find your niche on that. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, just because you go to medical school, it doesn't mean you're a good human being. Just like, you know, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and also too, well, no, I won't say that. It's too negative. But just to continue, I know we're over time probably, but I only have a couple more things to say. And then we could answer any last questions. But just generally, timeline for medical school, if you want to do it in 4 years, I would say these days it's actually becoming less and less common. Most people do it in 5 years, and that's okay. But if you do it in four, it's going to take a lot of foresight and planning, especially if you want to get into one of the more competitive specialties. the biggest reason I think people do a fifth year is to do research and maybe do a master's degree in order to make themselves more competitive for a more competitive specialty. And if that happens, that's okay. You know, one more year is fine, you know, in terms of the potential, like we talked about delayed gratification. Um, and what was I going to say? Oh, I would recommend, and this is only my opinion, that you do it between third and fourth year, because that gives you, you know, you've had some definitely some clinical experiences under your belt, and you can get your step two done in that time and try to score really, really, really high, and then you can apply and then go and finish up the whole residency application stuff during your final fifth year. If I had to do it all over again, I'd probably do that. You know, it's 5 years and then take a gap between my third and fourth years to do research or something. Um, but yeah, the general thing, if you do the 4 year plan, it's just going to be like, there's no rest for the weary. First year is typically the preclinical basic sciences, nitty gritty stuff that you're going to have to know and be assessed on for step one. So that's basically what the preclinical years are for, is to help you garner all that basic science knowledge. Does it and it doesn't matter, if you were a microbiology major or an English major, it is going to be a lot and it's going to be hard. So uh, just a lot of stuff to know. And I would just recommend like those early clinical exposures, regardless of whether your institution has those set up for you, you still need to be doing those shadowing like outside of that to get the most exposure that you can. Um, Second year, yeah, most schools like at least Stanford, they required like a research project like over the summer. Um, so you'd have to do that and then study and take the step one at the end of your second year. Um, and then before you know it, you'll be in clinicals. Some schools, they start clinicals a little bit earlier, which I'm definitely in favor of, but Stanford didn't do it that way. Um, and before you know it, you're gonna have, and there's a whole thing about the clinical rotations like that. Again, it's like the hidden curriculum. I didn't really understand like the weight of the evaluations and how that factors into this thing called the MSPE, a letter. It's like a summative evaluation of your clinical performance, and that's really important for residencies. But I think that stuff touches back on like what can you do now as like a first year, is like having a good career advisor and career mentor. And your career advisor and career mentor doesn't need to be in the specialty you envision yourself doing. They just need to care and they need to listen. And if you're between like two, three, four different residencies or programs, like I want to be a neurosurgeon, or I want to be a general surgeon, like you don't really know, they definitely should be helping prepare you for whichever one is the hardest to get into. Like, and have help you map out that detailed plan going forward. And you should strategize that way. Like if you're between two, like one obviously empirically, objectively is going to be more difficult to get into for residency. And that's the one you need to be strategizing for, so that just in case, um, you'll be able to meet the criteria to successfully match into either your first or second or third choice residency. Um, yeah, and then third and fourth year as such. And between third and fourth is when you'll take step two. And that is becoming step two because of step one becoming pass no pass. I've mentioned step two score is highly valuable, and you're going to need it to apply. You're going to need it to apply. It used to be that you could take it after you apply to residency, but now you absolutely need it before you apply, or else you will not be successful. So things are getting a little bit quicker. Um, Big lessons. I probably touched on a lot of this stuff as we went through it. Are there any other questions you saw pop up, Jovan?
Yeah, this is a couple more questions. They were just asking about what resources did you use for step one?
Step one, I use UWorld. So UWorld has become like the go-to de facto resource. I would say that is the standard. Beyond that, most people use Anki. for flashcards. The thing is like flashcards are timeless, and the purpose behind Anki is like to basically make them more efficient. It's a trade-off because Anki you can like you download all these flash decks, these flashcard decks that someone else has made, but in reality, the best like part of the whole thing about flashcards is making your own flashcards. That's how it's like technically supposed to work. But the issue that you come up against is like just the sheer volume of stuff that you're supposed to know. So that's why the Anki, it's like a trade-off. So you're not making your own flashcards, but you need to kind of like ask around like which is the ideal deck, or what are people using, and then use that flash deck to study whatever you're trying to study. So you don't get the benefit of making your own, but you get the benefit of saving you so much time making a billion flashcards, and you can just study them. And the hard part is like syncing up your study, like the overall flow of like whatever you're studying, or whatever other like textbook or whatever you're using, to the Anki decks. And if you had some experience doing that with the MCAT, then that should be easier. But if you don't and you want to use Anki, then you just have to do a little bit of reading, or talking to people, or going on Reddit or something to figure out what to do and how to incorporate it best. Um,
This is
yeah.
another question too, is what is your strategy for weeding out extra information from lectures that probably don't need to be studied?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think as medical students you have the tools or the skills or capability to do that, like with any confidence. Like, because you don't know, like, you just don't, there's no way you could know, like, how to weed out, like, what is truly important, what is not truly important. The fact is that there is a lot of stuff that is important, and there is a lot of stuff that is not important, that there is going to be dumped on those lecture slides, and they're going to give you decks of like hundreds of slides, and you're going to be like, they're making it harder for me than it needs to be. And that's true. And that's why I think those supplemental programs, like that's what one of the biggest benefits of them, of those programs, uh is that they've done that weeding out for you. And a lot of schools now, and a lot of like medical schools, medical classes, like the students themselves have taken to passing down resources from year to year. Like they usually, like I know at Stanford, and like I know many other schools do this, where they have like a folder that they share on Dropbox or something, that has a lot of resources that, so it makes it, a fairer level playing field, that everyone can have access to these third-party resources. Well, they'll have like a lecture series, like online, I don't know, online med ed, or one of these courses will be a very high yield lecture series paired with high yield like reference textbooks, or series of slides, and then you can study off of those. That honestly is like, someone, or you can sign up for these programs like fresh, like my friend, he used osmosis, and it was like he just paid the money because he had the money, like he just paid it, and he just studied that way. And that someone has really put in the time and effort to do that weeding for you. And if that appeals to you, then you might think about doing that, or using those shared resources that people are sharing like within your medical school.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think like in undergraduate, and even, I think in medical school they give you a folder with the outline of everything. But in undergraduate, just go up and ask your professor, like, or look at old tests, like some of them post old tests. I mean, I've had times where I would ask a question and somebody would, like my professor would say, "Oh, you don't need to know that." And that's like a really good way to know that you don't need to know that. So,
yeah.
but yeah, just don't feel like you have to like ask questions. Like it's okay, they're not like it's not some secret. Obviously they're not going to tell you what the answer to the exam is, but just asking them like, hey, do I need like, because some of the stuff, like certainly with like biology or even OChem, is like really minute, and people spend 10 years studying like that one thing. You don't need to know like in detail, you just need to know like in general. Somebody asked, this question about you expect a really fast-paced program. How do you learn the topic that you have to move on even if you've not learned it? And how do you manage that?
That's really hard. You you don't have the luxury of becoming an expert in any one topic area. You just have to know it enough and realize that like know it enough to like pass the test really is what I say it comes down to. And know and recognize that, you may forget some things like after you take the exam or whatever, but you're going to be asked to, you're going to be assessed on the same knowledge over and over and over and over again, usually. So, you're going to take the tests in your class at the end of the quarter or semester, and you're going to have to know it then. You're going to have to know it when you take step one. You're going to have to know some of the stuff when you are on wards and attending asks you about it. You're going to have to know it, when you take step two, some of the things that you've learned. So it's going to keep coming up over and over and over again. And then the stuff that really matters is going to stick. Um, so, you just gotta do the best you can with like trying to absorb all the information, but know that you'll see it multiple times usually.
Yeah, in ER, there's a quote that you're the jack of all trades,
Mm.
master of none,
Yeah.
and I think you just have to get and I think like with medicine is you become really specialized in that one thing and you know that area really well, but you're not gonna know everything. And
Yeah.
if you did, then you would be like Chat GPT, but we
Yeah.
all can't be
That's
that. But I think, yeah, but I even like, seeing how clinical medicine is practiced is that, you may have to go look at references and being able to learn how to look up information and how to, get that information that you need because you're not going to know everything. You're going to get, what do they call it? Zebras, you're going to get things that are really might, like one in a million case and
yeah.
you're not going to know. You're going to have to go look it up and read it and, you know,
Yeah. The number one resource that physicians use to look up stuff they don't know is um up to date. Up to date. That is the resource. And being at a medical school or whatever, usually you have free access to it. And it breaks down every single disease, every single symptom or presentation that one would ever want to know, like how its epidemiology, how it presents, the pathophysiology, the different treatments, the diagnostics, like everything. Um, and that's what I would use a lot on clinical rotations if like I had questions about a specific disease process.
yeah,
Up
and you
to,
have that in medical school and residency. So
yeah,
it's all like it's something that just, and apparently from what I've learned the other day, it's in the olden days, it used to be books, but now it's online on your phone. So
yeah, yeah,
you have to pull up these little books that they had.
yeah.
So I guess that's the nice thing. This is something else people want to ask. How do you get research opportunities?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as a medical student, it should be fairly easy to get, well, depending on where you go, um, and well, I would say in general, it's easier than undergraduate to get resources because a lot of times it's expected of you. So you're gonna have like resources and routes available to you to do that. Maybe that's not the case at every institution, but how to go about getting research. I'll tell you for, being at Stanford, they do have like a program set up just for like students to do research. I would still say that the hardest part was finding a PI or research mentor. Um, I don't know. Again, it's like an individualized approach. Like depending on your background experience in undergrad, you could leverage that if you still were interested in doing that type of research and like reach out. It's a lot of like you personally reaching out to people and trying to see, oh, if there's spots or something like opportunities available. The way I found my research, it was finally like I kept putting it off, but then There was some people that it was just like a email blast, like it was like a listserv sort of thing where they were looking for undergrads or excuse me, they were looking for medical students to assist in different research projects. That would for myself at Stanford, that would come up a lot where they were looking for medical students to do like a lot of the grunt work for the research projects, and so you could do that and just follow up on that. And for me, it was like I think there were a lot of opportunities, but it was stuff that didn't really align with what I wanted to do. It took me a while to find something in anesthesia, so that's what I did. Yeah, and yeah, I think Stanford is like a little bit more unique because they do have, they have a plethora of research opportunities. They don't want you to leave. They want you to just keep doing research there forever. And that was not something I was necessarily the most excited about, or wanted to do a lot of. So I
Yeah,
feel
and
like,
yeah.
no, I was gonna say if your institution doesn't have a lot of research opportunities, like I know they're like look that, on a national scale, I know that um well, for example, you could come to Stanford and do like if you're already a medical student at another institution, they always Stanford is always having medical students come to their campus to do research. And also that's a way to build connections and ties to an institution that you hope to go to for residency. So people, for example, I knew many people that came to Stanford during the summer. They were medical students at another institution just to do research so that they could one, do the research, and two, make those connections and form those relationships with the institution that they wanted to do residency at. So you could look at just any medical school or program that you wanted to go to for research opportunities. So,
Yeah, the thing is that this person was also asking about as a pre-med, and I would just say that there is
oh, pre-med, yeah,
we've done like probably 7 or 8 workshops on getting into research. We've had the NIH director of intramural research come and give talks. So go look back and look at those because there's a
yeah,
lot of information. There's summer programs that pay you like up to $8,000 to do research. There's whole, it's not a 30-second thing that we could tell you,
yeah,
because it's a process. And as a matter of fact, the NIH person, Dr. Milgram, did a whole half of our talk is about how to get research and how to approach a researcher. And I would just highly recommend you to look that up. I'm going to put that in the chat uh, as well, so you can take a look at it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there.
yeah. Um, just a couple other things, like in terms of medical school, when you do your clinical rotations, like I this is a huge misconception I had. I thought I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna learn stuff like it's gonna be like a job, like a mini, like a what do you call it? Internship, like a yeah, like a normal like everyday what people would call an internship or see what it's like in this discipline. And then what I learned on the job, I would be tested on. That's not the case. This is how naive I was. But like clinical rotations, yes, like their purpose is to expose you to a certain discipline like neurology. Okay, you're going to see what a neurologist like what it's like, and see what it's like to take care of those patients, but you're only seeing like a small window into what it actually means to be a neurologist, because it's only one specific context. And most physicians, they practice in multiple contexts. The major context being inpatient versus outpatient, And so like maybe you only get neurology inpatient, so you only see a small window. And maybe your institution only like you get placed in like the traumatic brain injury unit, so you only see traumatic brain injury unit patients. And then you at the end of your month, during which time you've worked like 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, just showing up, trying to help take care of these traumatic brain injury patients. Then at the end of that month, they're going to test you on the entire field of neurology. That is clinical rotations. Like, oh my gosh. my first couple of rotations, this again, being how naive I was, like going to, I thought, oh, the attendings, they're going to be teaching me on the fly and da 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 and quizzing me about this and that. No, no, you're going to see this teeny tiny bit of what it means, like pathologies in that discipline. And it's going to take your entire day. And then you're going to have to like, and you can't, I wish you could like make the day longer because it's like, everyone just gets you just get 24 hours and then you're supposed to make the most of whatever time you have to study for neurology itself. And so that's why it's so important to have foresight and planning into your studying and have these supplemental programs, because if you just rely on, like, say, the rotation itself, it's absolutely insufficient. Like, it's absolutely not going to help you at all. Oh, and to touch, I forgot to mention in terms of resources, like, I said, UWorld is like the staple, and then like a lot of people use Anki, but also like going to the people, like the people who actually administer the exams, like USMLE, like the MB&B National Board of Medical Examiners, they have practice tests. So like I didn't realize how crucial and absolutely required those tests are. And again, they cost money. They make you pay for them. They're $60 a pop. And when you're doing when you're in, like, going back to the neurology example, if you're trying to study for the exam, those are the tests that you absolutely, those practice exams you absolutely need to take. And like sometimes your rotation would be like, here's a free voucher code, but not every time. And then you're going to have to fork it out, like out of pocket. You're going to have to pay for those practice exams. That's how important they are. And no one ever explained that to me either. So I was like, oh, I don't think I need to do this practice test. Yes, I did. So another lesson I learned is, like, in terms of what it's like to study and go through clinical rotations. But um,
This is
that
something wanted to ask, what
yeah.
resources to study for the MCAT and what's the optimal year to take it?
Okay, yeah. So resources to study for the MCAT, I think UWorld is the go-to now for MCAT as well. Back when I took the MCAT, which was back in like 2015, like forever ago, um, I but I did know some things about myself that still hold true today. I needed a structured program, so I spent the money and paid for Princeton Review. That's the one that I did. A lot of people use, Kaplan or Berkeley Review or something like that. But that's the resource I went with. It was hybrid at the time, so a lot of self-study, workbook type stuff, but then we would meet for classes. Nowadays, in the virtual world, platform days, like, you can do those type of format too, that much more accessible. So you got to do something like I would recommend a structured program in some form, and you need to get your hands on some practice tests. Again, probably going to the source is best. So I forget, whoever was it, AMCAS or whoever administers the MCAT, get their practice test, apply for the financial aid early. Then I remember missing that deadline, to make sure all the things, the fees can be waived as possible. Maybe you get a free practice test. I'm not sure. Um, but in terms of the best month, that's a difficult. It all depends. Like, if you're still in undergrad and you're trying to do it, again, I couldn't do that. I took it during my gap years. So some people do it during their gap years. And if that's the case, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of when to take it. But you need, for the MCAT these days, people study like 6 months. Like, they'll dedicate like 6 months. Uh, I hazard to guess you need at least 4 to feel confident going into it. Um, and yeah, you want to do as well as you possibly can, because I knew, if you don't make the minimum threshold of like 500, you're not gonna get in. Like, I unfortunately, I knew some mentees, they scored like 495 around there in the under 500, and they didn't get into medical school this year. So there are those hidden cutoffs, And it's possible that you get in, but the odds are very, very, very low. Even if you have research, if you have all the extracurriculars that you could think of, if you don't meet those thresholds when it comes to these huge exams, it can really break, make or break in terms of getting in. So you want to do the best you possibly can. So if you can give yourself 4 to 6 months dedicated study time, that's what you need to do. And if you figure out a way to do it while you're still in undergrad, like, oh my gosh,
God bless you.
yeah, you're a
Um,
genius.
so this is something else. We've had 5 sessions on the MCAT, on what is the MCAT, how to study it, how to study as a first and second year student, how to do well on your second study skills. Last week we had 2 people in our group that scored in the 98th percentile, and they put all of their information from their Anki to all the material that they use, and it's like almost 5 GB, and it's on the website link that I put in the chat. So it's free. You don't have to pay for it. Just go download what they did, and they didn't do a prep course, but they also, I would just say, they're both highly intelligent. So um, it may work for them, but if you need the discipline, take a prep course and do a little bit of research, because they're both like, there's like a bunch of different MCAT prep companies, and they each have strengths and weaknesses, and do a little bit of research on that. But we also had somebody who actually like writes MCAT books that came and did presentations for us. So just go look at some of their past events. This is one more question: is it true to get into competitive residency, you have to participate in research and leadership during medical school?
Mm, I would say yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
This whole like thing of leadership and research and all of this, like that's gonna be until you like, even when you get a job, you're still gonna have to do it. So
Yeah. Yeah. You have to, like, I knew people who wanted, like, and well, it is possible to get into certain residencies without research, but if you want to, yeah, but even in those ones that are like lax when it comes to having research or not, like pediatrics is one of those. But if you want to get into the best pediatric residencies in the country, yeah, you're gonna have to do research and leadership. Like they're not gonna take anything less.
and can you tell them why research is important? You should have some idea about it.
Yeah, I should. Why research is important? Just generally, I mean, the importance is advancing the field of medicine, and it doesn't need to be the stereotypical like basic science way. It can also be clinical, like clinical research. It can be like quality improvement type research, or projects. It doesn't have to be quantitative, it can be qualitative research where you're doing surveys and interviews. Like all of that is important to further the collective knowledge of healthcare and medicine. And it gives you an appreciation for um uh the field, and it allows you to gain um useful skills that are going to be potentially marketable. Like, people are going to want people who are able to have, like, you got to have a basic, I mean, statistics. It never goes away. Um, it constantly is coming up, and we're tested on a step 1, step 2, probably step 3. I don't know yet, but probably. And you have to know the fundamentals of um, different like statistical analysis stuff and different types of studies. I'm looking at questions right now. It's like, oh, is this a retrospective or a prospective cohort study, or this and that? So you gotta have like a foundational knowledge of research, so that, and then also, you got to be able to communicate. It's a way of communicating um, amongst your peers. Like, one day you're a practicing whatever specialist, like you're going to be signed up to their newsletters. They're going to be disseminating the latest papers, and they want you to be prepared to critically analyze these studies, and be able to engage in dialogue about them. And you're going to be going to conferences, and people are going to be talking about the research, and you want to be knowledgeable about that. And that's important too. Like uh um yeah, literacy, going to presenting, not just receiving but disseminating information. You need to have that practice. It's important. And I would say, like, an expectation in medical school that isn't clearly communicated, but you need to be doing research, and you need to be going to, like, figure out what conferences you need to go to and just go. Like, it wasn't until like this year that I went to the American Society of Anesthesiologists conference, and like I went there and I was like, I should have come here a long time ago. It's pretty cool. Like, it's pretty exciting. It's pretty fun. Like, it's not to be scared of it. I saw like first year med students there. I'm like, well, how did you decide to come here? And they're like, oh, I just did. And you need to be jumping at those opportunities from the get-go. And it starts in undergrad too. Like, when I was in undergrad, I did a few did I do? Yeah, well, I did the Society for um Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science, a SACNAS conference in LA one year. That was also very exciting and fun. So
Yeah, if you live in the big
yeah.
city, um, I know that I've done that. If you live in the big city, there's always medical conferences, and you could actually like go volunteer and not pay like the $1,000 registration fee and just show up, and you could do that. That's like a trick that I did for ACS in San Francisco. Um,
Yeah.
so then yeah, so um
Yeah.
um yeah, so I would just say that, um I would say that yeah, just do that. And then the last question is, what advice would you give if you go back in time?
Mhm.
What advice would you give yourself during this when you were at Santa Rosa, you know, before you started this whole process? What advice would you give yourself? What would you do differently, and what would you do the same?
What advice would I give myself? It's a great question. Yeah, I think I've tried to tell you everything I wish I would have told myself, and wish I would have done. Um, like, I think the best way I can think about it now too is, say one day my daughter grows up, she wants to be a doctor and she's about to start medical school. What would I tell her? I would tell her I would want to make sure she's set up for success. I would want to make sure that she gets plugged in early. I would say, I would ask her, oh, do they have a early start program? You should probably do that. You should, you know, get the lay of the land, like ease in as much as you can. What's your study plan going to be? How are you going to do well on step one and step two? Who's going to be your go-to mentor? Like, which disciplines are you most interested in? Like, maybe you should consider emailing some of those attendings at the hospital. See if you can come in like that summer and start shadowing, and see if you can get into the OR. Like, get those experiences, like make the most of the medical school, like golden ticket. Um like start doing things that are exciting and fun. And how can you get involved in taking care of patients early? What do you need to do to be able to work at the free clinic? Like, you should, what are you waiting for? Like, do that, get that set up and get going. And how are you going to make sure that you are healthy and well over the next 4 or 5 years? Are you going to be eating healthy? Like, where are you going to get your meals? Where are you going to get your food? Where's the gym? Are you going to go to the gym? Are you going to jog? Are you going to do, because that's really important. And I just think that you have to take a holistic approach, and that's what I would tell my daughter, and that's what I'd tell myself if I could go back in time. Like, um, I'd also thinking about myself now. I'd also tell myself that, you know, um, it's gonna be okay. Um, there will be times to take breaks, but the majority of your time, um, is gonna be studying. Like, that is your job. Your job is to study, and it's gonna suck, but it's going to be arduous at times, and you're going to want to be outside in the sun. You're going to be want to be at the pool, um, but you will have time for those things, plenty of time for those things in the future. For now, you need to prioritize like 6 days a week studying. That's your job. So, and inch by inch, it's a cinch. Something along those lines.
Inch by inch is a cinch. Never heard that before. Well, anyways, I actually start work in a couple of minutes. I actually get going. Thank you again. Dr. Douglas. I gotta start calling you Dr. Douglas now. So,
Yeah,
uh,
you can
but
just call me Mark.
and thank you again for coming. Thanks everyone for being here. And like I said, we could keep Dr. Douglas here for another hour, but I'm sure he's busy and he's got to run and do things. And
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Jubin, for always being here, and your stalwart support of the community, and just hosting this, and allowing me the opportunity to give back. So it really invigorates me, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm here, to help in whatever way that I can, people who want to be incredible physicians. So thank you.
thank you very much. And everyone have a great weekend. Hopefully you could come tomorrow and be inspired by Dr. Q, Dr. Quinones. And yeah, so everyone have a great evening. Bye.
Good night. Bye.